Demons have had an interesting journey through the media. Initially, they were mostly confined to evil forces that prey on mankind. Think of any supernatural horror film, and the evil presence is likely some sort of demon. There have been a long line of films based around the concept of exorcisms, from The Exorcist and The Possession of Hannah Grace, and films about hell and summoning demons, like Hellhole and The Unholy. All meant to be quite scary and dripping with religious imagery, they do not give demons a particularly good rep. But for every instance of something being taken seriously, there is something else to ridicule it, and the devil is no exception. Parodied in shows like Futurama and South Park, old Lucifer does not demand the same respect and fear that he used to. Nowadays, he and his minions can appear in most genres, from detective shows, dark comedy animations, fantasy fun, and now, that weirdly specific YA genre trope of a group of people gathering together in a specific place where, through a series of crazy random happenstances, reveals some dark, terrible secret or event that occurred the last time they were gathered together in this weird, specific place. There's no sure way of saying that, I'm afraid. Fun fact, I am really into demons. Not as in Satanism or anything. I just find demons and all the stuff written about them in things like Solomon's Lesser Key and Colin de Plancy's Dictionnaire Infernal to be low-key hilarious. This is why, when I happened across this in the library, I knew I had to read it. Sign Here by Claudia Lux markets itself as a dark comedy mixed with thrilling drama. It follows Peyot Trip, or Pey, who works in hell. He's not exactly a demon. The people working in hell seem to be just people who died, were damned, and worked their way up from cannon fodder to cannon lighters. But for all intents and purposes, he is a demon, and his current role is a deal maker. The demons that go to Earth to persuade foolish mortals to sign contracts, their soul in return for whatever petty issue they want fixing. Compared to the rest of hell, Pey has it pretty sweet. But nevertheless, he wants out and has hatched a plan that involves a family on Earth called the Harrisons. The Harrisons are off to their holiday lake house for the summer, under Pey's watchful eye. But as secrets are revealed and a dark past is dragged to the surface, will his plan come to fruition? Or will the entire family find themselves damned to hell? Overall, there is a good story here, or stories, I should say, as this did feel like two different tales just sort of smashed together. One follows Pey and his efforts to get out of hell whilst dealing with a new co-worker called Calamity Gannon. The other follows the Harrisons at their lake house as they uncover the truth about what happened one fateful summer in the past. I genuinely liked both stories. I suppose if I'm being honest, I enjoyed the Harrison story more, just because it felt more complete, like you were actually finding out information. It was a pretty good mystery, with sufficient clues to work out the truth. Pey's story was alright, but I think I enjoyed the setting more than the actual story, as, on reflection, there wasn't really much of one. There is some cool world building here, especially in regards to hell and its different levels, which are akin to the circles of hell in Dante's Divine Comedy. So, for example, on the 5th level are the Dealmakers, where Pey works, and other levels that do other things. I also like the fact that hell, at least when you're higher up, isn't terrible. It's just kind of annoying. Like a series of inconvenient events. I enjoyed most of the characters. Pey is a good character to follow because he does have a lot of agency. He does go around doing stuff and finding things out. Trey, who is another deal maker, is really fun to hate. The Harrisons were pretty good. You've got Silas, the dad, Lily, the mum, Mickey, the daughter, Sean, the son, and Ruth, who's Mickey's friend. They were believable as a family with some good dynamics. Mickey and Sean especially were good depictions of teenagers, with Sean awkwardly withdrawing in on himself, Mickey awkwardly trying to fit in with the cool kids, and following the example of Ruth, who is a little wild and doesn't exactly set a good example. But you can understand why Mickey wants to be like her and follows in her footsteps. And just in general, there were lots of fun little details sprinkled throughout. It's a Moorish sort of a book with very short chapters. And whilst I thought the chapters were maybe too short, with many only being a couple of pages long, it did keep you reading. The main problem is that the two stories felt very separated. There was the Harrison story and Pey story, and they only really crossed over once at the end in a way so small that it could have been written out. If you took the demon plot out of the book, you'd end up with a perfectly serviceable thriller without needing to do too much amending. If you cut out the Harrison story, you'd end up with a dark comedy about a demon and his co-workers I didn't mind them being separate at the beginning, but I think they definitely needed to be more involved overall. I mean, people picking up this book know it's got supernatural demonic shenanigans in it. It's got a pitchfork on the front cover, for goodness sake. I dare say they want demonic shenanigans, so why not actually give us demonic shenanigans that affect the people? Whilst I like the world building, we definitely needed more of it. I wanted to know early on what happened on each floor of hell. If being downstairs is essentially being tortured on conveyor belts, how the heck do you move up from that, as Calamity Ganon apparently managed to do? Pei does directly address the reader throughout, so you could definitely have put in a brief guide to the different levels of hell without it feeling out of place. What happens on the 6th level? They've got the Looking Glass, which is an omniscient computer from the 90s, but who actually works on that level, and what do they actually do? How does hell work in this world? It's where bad people go, or people who sell their souls go, but is it only run by damned people, or are there actual demons? Is there a devil? Is there heaven? Is there a chance of redemption? How does religion play into it? How do you summon demons? Is it common knowledge that you can make a deal with the devil? So many questions, so few answers. For the most part, the demons just sort of wait to be summoned, which is a little boring. Whilst Pei does have agency in his own quest to get out of hell, there isn't any agency on the demons' part to actually make contracts. They don't seem to guide people into asking for help or orchestrating the required desperation. They just sit around waiting, which is dull. There was some attempt at feminism, which fell flat because we were never shown any gender discrimination. Calamity Ganon, or Cal, the new recruit, presents herself as this mousy, awkward, shy person in overlarge jumpers. But this is a lie. She's actually very capable and clever and cunning. Fine, whatever. She says this is because hell is still very sexist and has to therefore pretend to be all sweet and shy to... What exactly? To sneak by? So people underestimate her? I don't know. Either way, this whole argument falls down flat for several reasons. Firstly, lady, you're in hell. What part of hell made you think it was going to be the centre of equality? Secondly, there are only 4 characters we really deal with in hell. Pei, a knobhead called Trey, KQ, the boss, and Cal. Trey is a raging narcissist, so he treats everyone terribly. Therefore, you can't use his chauvinism as being representative of the entire population. KQ and to a lesser extent Pei are a little more condescending than need be, but I got the impression that was because of Cal acting like a little shy mouse instead of because she's a woman. It's like doing maths and complaining that you don't understand, and then someone comes to help you and you accuse them of assuming that you can't do maths because you're a woman. No, it's because you couldn't do it. Thirdly, the whole argument is about struggling to move on up and doing twice as much work as the men and all that. That is an unsupported claim by someone who lies constantly, and it is undermined by the fact that KQ, their boss, is a woman. So clearly women can excel in this work environment. There's nothing to suggest that KQ is the only female worker at her high level, so what exactly is the argument here? Look, I'm not against having feminism or any other kind of ism addressed in books, but you have to show me that it's an issue, not just tell me and expect me to believe you blindly. Show, don't tell. It's like the first rule of writing. There was also a bit of it with Lily. I didn't mind this so much because it was more about her being expected to be beautiful and nothing else.
What else is there?
When she was younger, and how she feels empty and unfulfilled now because of it. Understandable stuff, and you see how this has affected her. And there's some other bits about her husband Silas not appreciating all the facets of her, which is a little unfair considering Silas is at the same time feeling like she's pulled away. But I can see both sides, so fine. The problem I had was near the end when her affair comes to light. She's having an affair, by the way, but that's not a spoiler because you find out about it on page 27. Silas has found out, Lily is feeling all sorts of emotions, but the thing that rises to the surface is this frustration that she has carved away parts of herself to fit him, like 2 jigsaw pieces making a whole, and that he doesn't want those parts that she's carved away and all that sort of stuff. Really making him out to be the bad guy, which falls rather flat considering she was the one who had the affair. I get she was in a funny place and clearly needs therapy and a hobby, but it just felt like she was trying to justify the fact that she was being unfaithful. Like, no, I'm sorry, but no, that does not jam with me. If it had been near at the beginning to explain her headspace when she began the affair, then fine, but Because it came now, when it had been revealed, it was almost like coming up with excuses to not be the bad guy. Same energy as not feeling bad because you committed the crime, but feeling bad because you got caught. Obviously, people aren't perfect, and I'm not frustrated that she was a normal, imperfect human. I'm just frustrated that it came across as the book trying to justify actions that can't be justified. Don't cheat on your partner, guys! While there were some nice turns of phrase throughout, I was overall unimpressed with the writing style. It just felt a little overwritten and wordy, which made parts of it difficult to follow, and the long passages of abstract description, emotions and all that, were trying too hard to be poignant and ended up as just confusing. Also, there were a few formatting and editing mistakes throughout, like the font changing thickness or size halfway through a page, and a new paragraph starting partway through a sentence, and things of that nature. Not the author's fault, but the publishers really should have noticed those. The tone was confused. I was expecting a dark comedy. That's what it's marketed as. That's how it started, but it really wasn't that funny. Outside of a few details about hell, it was just kind of glum. I mean, I get dark comedy has to go to dark places, but I'm sorry, a teenager showing another teenager how to self-harm with a razor and romanticising the whole ordeal, and continuing to romanticise it through descriptions of the wound and the plaster afterwards, just did not work. I get this is an adult book, but I can see teenagers picking this up, and I think the way it was written could be quite the incentive for young, impressionable people to give it a go. Again, it's not the book's responsibility, but I do think it should have been a little more careful about it. There are sections which are taken from Calamity Ganon's files. Pei is given them by KQ when he agrees to mentor her, and occasionally we see him reading them. Firstly, I struggled for a while to understand what was happening in these files, because there were lots of cults and mentions of brothers and fathers without any concrete details as to who they actually were or anything. Secondly, they were written like prose, like stories, instead of information files, which was a curious decision. And, sorry to say, ineffective. Imagine if MI6 wrote all their reports like a description-heavy book instead of cold listed facts. It would be weird. This is weird. Finally, I really didn't like the ending. This is very subjective, and I can understand people who do like it, but spoilers, I found it made the book completely pointless. At the end, Pei manages to get out of hell, which means he gets a do-over at life. Because he lived a few decades before the book takes place, this essentially scrubs the Harrisons' plot from existence. For now. He finds out he only went to hell because he sold his soul to save his daughter from dying of cancer by taking the cancer himself. He makes the deal again, but this time makes sure he still lives a long life instead of dying immediately, but he'll still go to hell. This time with no memories at all, because he requested a full memory scrub when he goes, and presumably the Harrisons' plotline will play out as it did before. That, or depending on what deals he made with other Harrisons, and if other demons made those deals instead, now might not exist at all. So it's not an open ending where you don't know what happens next, but rather I don't know what happens at all now. And because you've got to know these characters, I just felt a little cheated knowing they may now never actually exist, or still have a terrible time. What was the point of the book? The only character who ends up possibly in a better place is Cal when she was alive. I won't go through all that plot stuff, but she might be better off now. But there's no guarantee that she does have a better life. Pei in this second shot at life picks her up as a child to help her, but we don't know that he manages to help her. She may just run away into the same fate. Oh yeah.
There is one thing.
Here is a passage from page 233. The map flickered again, and I could see Florida and the jagged edge of Georgia meeting the Pacific. You sure about that? This is not the best book in the world, but a decent enough read if it sounds like your sort of thing. The story makes it just about good enough to recommend for people who are interested in that thriller genre. I just wouldn't go into it expecting a darkly funny, demonic romp, because it isn't, sadly. Apparently this is going to be a television series on Amazon, produced by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, the mind behind Fleabag. I have seen her one-woman version of Fleabag from the National Theatre, which was alright. Certainly mixed oblique comedy with the darkest sides of human nature, so maybe she can work some magic with this concept. So if it actually does get made, it'll be interesting to see if it works any better as a show than as a book. Until next time.